Hi, everyone. Welcome to another TLN webinar. We're very excited today as we talk with Sherri Vaughn about grant writing and proposal writing. And I will let you take it away.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Today's class is Introduction to Proposal Writing. For today's class, there should be 3 handouts that will appear in the chat shortly, I'm hoping. The Introduction to Proposal Writing handout, the Proposal Project Outline Worksheet, and the Proposal Project Outline Sample. Again, my name is Sherri Vaughn, and my contact information is on the slide. If you have questions after the event, or if you're interested in having me speak at your library, either to your staff or to your patrons, I'm happy to set something up for you. Candid sounds familiar to you because you already know them. In 2019, GuideStar in the Foundation Center came together to form Candid. You may be wondering, what is Candid and why should I be interested in what they do? Candid is a nonprofit organization. Every year, millions of nonprofits spend trillions of dollars around the world. Candid finds out where that money comes from, where it goes, and why it matters. We get you the information you need to do good. The Farmington Community Library is a funding partner with Candid, which basically means we pay a yearly subscription to have access to their online resources, specifically the Foundation Directory, which now includes grants to individuals, GuideStar, their training materials, and access to their webinars. The Foundation Directory is where you can search for funders. GuideStar is where funders find you. Resources are free at funding partner libraries. Otherwise, they are subscription databases. Are there any questions yet coming in? No?
Not yet, but if anyone does have questions, feel free and drop them in the chat.
There were over 1,200 funding partner locations in the United States and Mexico. The library is in Oakland County, and I believe we're the only one with the collection. To find out where a location is near you, go to candid.org/find us. To begin our discussion, we'll start by looking at the proposal writing process as a whole. It's important to know that proposal writing is part of a process that includes planning, research, writing, and follow-up. Building relationships with donors and potential donors is also a very important aspect of all types of fundraising. The thing to remember is that you can devote a lot of time and possibly money as well to produce a well-written proposal, but if you've skipped one of the other steps, your proposal may not be as successful as it could be. By the end of today's training, you should be able to list the basic elements of a proposal, draft a standard project proposal, identify next steps for submitting a grant proposal, and follow up with a funder after submitting a proposal. Planning is a very important first step in the proposal writing process. Grant seeking is very competitive, and you need to be very prepared when approaching funders. In getting started, you'll need to make sure you give yourself enough time to go through each step of the process so that you can end up with a very competitive proposal. Once you submit the proposal, the funder will have their own process for reviewing the many proposals that they receive. It can easily take 6 to 9 months from the date your proposal is submitted to the date you receive a check. So if you're looking for money for next month, that's not going to happen usually. Next, you'll need to decide what kind of support you need. Funding for general operations, funding for a specific project or program, or something else, such as equipment or building renovation. It's often easier to secure funding for a specific project or program than for general operations. It's easier for funders to measure direct impacts and outcomes if it's tied to a specific project. It's hard to measure how salaries and rent benefit the community and not just the organization itself. With that in mind, today we're going to focus on preparing a project proposal. For general operating support, instead of focusing on a specific program or project, you will apply these elements to your organization as a whole. Before you start writing, you'll need to know as much as possible about the funder as possible. Thorough research helps you know who you are approaching and why. When we ask funders, the number one reason is why a proposal isn't funded, they often say it's because it wasn't the right fit for what they were looking for. That's why finding the right match between what you plan to do and the funder's interest is critical to the success of your proposals. Many proposals actually focus on what's in it for them, the organization. Few, if any, pay attention to what's in it for the funder. A grant proposal should be viewed as a win-win proposition. It's a mutually beneficial relationship where each party gets something out of it. This win-win proposition begins with identifying what the funder cares about and is most interested in funding. The database we have at the library, the Foundation Directory, will help you identify funders who give to your area of interest or your subject, your geographic focus, and the type of support you are looking for. To learn more about the Foundation Directory online and how to use it to find grants, please take our Introduction to Finding Grants class. Last but not least, remember the why is important as who, meaning once you identified a list of potential prospects, you need to tell them why they should care about your particular project or program based on their specific interest. How will it help them to achieve their goals as well as your own? Next, I'll speak to the writing the proposal and how to follow up with a funder. Also, if you remember nothing else from today, keep this tip in mind. Always follow the funder's guidelines. This can cover anything from word count limitations to requested attachments. Many funders are moving to online formats, or they might have their own application form. In many geographic regions, the Regional Association of Grant Makers have created a common grant application form that will enable you to submit the same information to multiple funders. In Michigan, that common grant application appears on the Council of Michigan Foundation's website. No matter what format the funder requires, the types of questions they ask are very similar. It's important to also note that some funders will not have a specific format at all, but will just ask to provide the answers to a series of questions. If they don't have a specific format, the structure we'll cover in this course is a good one to use. Either way, I would recommend putting together a boilerplate proposal using the format we're about to go over for every project or program for which your organization needs funding. It's a good way to think through all the questions a funder might ask, regardless of what format you will eventually put the information in. It's often hard to write and edit in the limited space and character restrictions most applications provide. So sometimes it's helpful to have the basic template. I usually use, of the last 5 grants that I've written over the past year, 2 of them were in the funders portal. And then the remaining ones were in Google Docs. So I could save those and also have a backup copy in Microsoft Word or another application. Just have a backup plan. But even with this template, you want to remember that proposal is like a resume. When you are looking for a job, you still want to tailor it to meet the needs of the job description, or in this case, the funder's guidelines and interests. But this will give you a good head start. These are the basic elements of a standard proposal: the executive summary, the narrative, which is the largest section of your proposal, describes the statement of need, the proposed budget, your organizational history background, and finally, the conclusion. You will also need to include a budget along with other supporting materials. We will cover what to include in the supporting materials once we describe the basic elements. In order to write an effective proposal, you must be able to make a compelling case for support. A grant is an investment, and with any investment, the funder is looking for a high rate of return with a low risk. A grant is an investment in your organization, the issue you are trying to solve, your constituents, your community, and your impact. A low risk means that you are capable of carrying out this project in the most effective and efficient way. With that in mind, here are the questions most, if not all, funders will want to know. What specific need are you addressing? What are you trying to achieve? What is your strategy for making this happen? How will you know if you are successful? Why are you the best organization to do this work? And how will the project sustain itself in the long run? We'll look at each of these questions individually. This tells the reader what problem you are trying to solve and why they should care. It's not enough to simply state the problem. You'll also need to back it up with supporting facts and statistics. Make sure your facts and statistics are relevant to the specific population and community you are serving and fit the size and scope of your solution. No matter how serious the problem, don't paint such a grim picture that the situation appears hopeless, no matter how much money the funder might give you. And a tip is be prepared to explain how your solution is addressing the size, scale of the need that you are addressing. The project description will be the longest and most detailed section of your proposal. This is the section in which you will describe exactly how you plan to address the issue you raised in the needs section with measurable outcomes. This section will usually begin with a statement of project goals and objectives. People and even funders use these terms differently. But for our purposes today, we'll say that goals are broad, general statements of what you plan to measure, of what you plan to accomplish. Objectives flow from the goals, and they are specific and measurable with a realistic time frame. Some people use the SMART acronym to describe objectives, which means your objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, and realistic with a defined time frame. You should also discuss whether this issue is currently being addressed. If so, how will your solution be different? Your project description should also detail the particular method you will use to implement your project. In other words, what are your specific strategies for accomplishing your goals and objectives? This section details your plan of action, which should clearly explain the who, what, where, when, and how of your strategy. How will you plan to implement, including who will do the work, what is going to happen, where it will happen, and when it will happen. In addition to a well thought out description, you should also include a timetable or step-by-step plan showing exactly how the plan will be executed and completed. Be sure to emphasize any collaborations or partnerships you may have with other organizations or community groups. Foundations like to see organizations working together in collective and innovative ways rather than duplicating their efforts. Along the same lines, if you believe that your project can be replicated and be a model for others, include that information as well. It will help demonstrate that funding your organization or project will have a more long-lasting and far-reaching impact. How do you know if you're successful? How will you evaluate your project is also a very important question that funders will ask. Your evaluation process will show them, but also you, if you have achieved your goals and objectives. It will also help you measure your success and overall impact and prove that what you are doing is making a difference. There are many kinds of evaluation techniques which will depend on many different factors. But here are some things to keep in mind. First, as mentioned earlier, under goals and objectives, you must start by specifying your program objectives in measurable terms. Once you have done that, you can identify key indicators of success based on your goals and objectives. Some things are easier to measure than others, like how many people a food bank serves versus how do you measure the success of a mentoring program for teenage girls? You should be sure to use both quantitative and qualitative measures. An example I have is if your goal is to raise the self-esteem of teenage girls, how would you go about measuring your success or impact? Some of the answers would be for quantitative, a decrease in detentions. Has there been a decrease in absences, fights, visits to the office, tardiness, higher grades and test scores, all of which can be counted and measured numerically. Qualitative is based on more subjective measures, stories, anecdotes, quotes from teachers, parents, their own journals, or peer discussion groups. There's been more involvement in student activities, a better appearance. There's been less risky behavior, a more positive outlook on life, and future goals and plans. You get the idea. Feel free to use your own examples. Once you have defined what you will measure, you can come up with methods on how you will collect the data and analyze your activities. You should also develop a time frame for monitoring the success of the program on an ongoing basis and not just at the end of the project, so you can be sure you're on the right track. Why are you the best organization to do this work? At some point in the proposal, you will need to give the reader information about your organization as a whole. You can do that at the beginning or at the end of your proposal. This is where you talk about your mission and organizational history, along with other programs and services, your accomplishments, your reputation, your visibility in the community, and your track record of success. Bear in mind that most foundations will be looking for a track record of significant accomplishment. If your organization is new and you don't yet have much of a track record, you may have some difficulty in securing foundation support. If that's the case, you might want to shift your fundraising strategy and spend your first or second year gathering support from individuals in your community who are in a position to know your personal situation and reputation and see the good work that you are doing. Any questions yet in the chat?
Not yet, but if anybody's interested, feel free. You can drop a question in the chat.
How will the project sustain itself in the long run? Foundations tend to think in the long term. Before funding your project, they may be concerned about how you sustain it after the grant period ends. No foundation is likely to fund you forever, and your nonprofit cannot exist on grant support alone. You need to think through how your organization will support itself in the long run. What is your business plan? How will you support your work if grant funding is not readily available? Overall, you should be sure to look for diverse streams of funding. If a funder reads your proposal and is interested in potentially funding your work, the next step they'll often take is to do their due diligence to research your organization's credibility through financial stability and impact. And often, when doing their due diligence, they'll review a nonprofit Candid profile. If you filed a 990, odds are that your nonprofit has a Candid profile. You can claim it and use the profile as a tool to grow your organization's credibility and online presence. One part of the grant seeking plan should be to claim and update your nonprofit profile. It's free and it's a great way to share information about your mission and work with millions of potential donors. Candid profiles go well beyond the IRS data and provide opportunities for you to create a more fuller, publicly available picture of your nonprofit than a 990 provides. As you complete your profile, you can earn seals of transparency, which indicate that you have key information on your nonprofit profile. When you earn a seal of transparency, you provide context for the IRS information already in your organization's nonprofit profile. It gives donors and funders better insight into your work, and you can stand out from other nonprofits in our database, all by claiming your organization's profile and completing the required fields. The amount of information you provide determines which of our 4 seals that you can earn. There are 4 levels listed here. The bronze, you can earn by sharing your mission and basic contact information so that donors can find you. A silver, which you can earn by providing program information and your brand details. A gold is earned by sharing financial and leadership information to help you gain trust and support. And the platinum seal of transparency, which is the highest level of seal that you can earn. In order to earn a platinum seal, you must share how you measure your progress and results. The information you must share to earn a platinum seal helps you show the difference that your work is making.
So we do have a question. Oh, go ahead.
To earn the platinum seal of transparency, you must also complete the bronze, silver, and gold requirements. Your question?
There is a question in the chat.
All right.
The question is just, where was the website to apply for those seals? Is it just on candid.org?
It is, yeah. And I'll show you that right here. Oh, no, not there. I have the link coming up here. Once you've earned your seal of transparency, you'll have access to a unique shareable profile link that you can use to give donors. Send this link to funders or even include it in your email signature so they can view your most recent up-to-date information. It's coming up next. Nonprofit profiles not only appear on Candid's GuideStar website, information from these profiles appears across a range of platforms, including Facebook and giving platforms. Also, large investment banks and companies that manage donations for private individuals often use nonprofit profiles to decide where to make gifts for their investors. Note this includes the most major U.S. donor-advised funds. In the context of this proposal writing course, I especially want to highlight that nonprofit profiles are often linked in grant management software. If you apply for a grant at a foundation online, the grant management software likely is what you'll submit your application on. Then on the back end, program officers at the foundation use this software to review and track your application. This software often links to your nonprofit profile, and foundations use your nonprofit profile as part of their due diligence process when considering an applicant for grants.
We do have another question before.
There'll be
So it looks like, is claiming your profile on Candid and completing the info something you can do for free or without a subscription for Candid? Are we able to share our org's Candid link for free without being a subscriber when applying for grants?
Yes, you can go to, it's actually your profile appears in GuideStar.org, and you can claim that for free and update it. There's no charge to use that. So here is a brief video. Let me know if you can hear this.
Building out your Candid nonprofit profile is a great way to build credibility and tell your organization's story to potential funders and donors. The information you share also shows up on our partners' donation sites, including Facebook charitable fundraising and donor advised funds such as Fidelity and Schwab. Get started to raise your organization's visibility in just 3 simple steps. First, create your Candid account using your work email. Using your work email simplifies the authorization process. Once you have created your Candid account, log in and search for your organization to connect to its profile. Complete a brief form to help us verify that you represent your organization. Then click Submit and our support team will review your request. You can start updating your organization's profile as soon as the request is approved. All you need to earn a bronze seal of transparency is to share basic organizational info. Add more information to earn silver, gold, and platinum seals. Get started today. Create your account and claim your organization's profile to tell your story.
So to learn more about how to claim your profile and earn seals of transparency, check out help.candid.org/s. And if anyone has questions after this session, I'm happy to answer them. Let's return to the proposal itself. The last but not least part is the conclusion. You should end with a compelling conclusion which speaks to why this funder should fund this project. It doesn't have to be long. A paragraph or two will do. Your goal here is to answer what I call the so what question. If this project is funded, how will life be better and for whom, and why should this funder care? How will this be a mutually beneficial partnership?
Real quick, we have another question.
Yeah.
So if the fiscal agency is the city for the library, like they're using their EIN, can the library create a separate profile from the city?
No, the city, I think, would, if the city has the 990, then you would log in under the city and add your information. The executive summary. The executive summary is one of the most important parts of the proposal because the reader will often read it first to determine if they want to read the rest of your proposal. If it doesn't catch their attention right away, he or she may not continue reading it. It's also helpful to have an executive summary on hand when making an initial approach to a funder. Most people who write proposals find that it's easier to write the full proposal first and then extract the key information to put into the one-page summary. Your executive summary will include your statement of need, the name of the project, a brief description of your project, including the goals and objectives, information about your organization as a whole, and how much money are you asking for. Along with your proposal, you'll need to send a number of documents as requested by the funder. One is a copy of your IRS letter of determination to prove that you are a legal nonprofit. So first and foremost, you must have your 501c3. Foundations are required by the Internal Revenue Service to give to charitable organizations for charitable purposes, and they have to report that information to the IRS. so they can't give money to your organization without it. The funder will also want to send other financial documents along with your proposal budget, such as your organization's most recent audited financial statements, your 990, and perhaps your general operating budget for the past few years. Things like audits can be expensive, so if you don't have something like that, a funder request, just don't leave it out. Call and ask if they will accept something else in its place. The funder will also usually request a list of your board of directors. Be sure to provide names along with professional affiliations. It's also a good idea to supply brief biographical information of your key staff members to point out once again that the people carrying out your project have sufficient knowledge and experience to ensure its success. The main thing here is to include everything the funder asks for and very little of anything else. They typically don't want additional materials such as books, videos, DVDs, or newspaper clippings. If you have these, you can just refer to them in your proposal and say you would make them available upon request. For online applications, it's okay to add links for additional information where possible. Overall, you want to make sure that your proposal is legible and easy to read with no typos. Make sure you don't use any fancy fonts or binders. They will typically ask that you not use staples, since they often have to disassemble proposals to make copies for distribution for the review committee. They will sometimes ask you to send X number of copies along with your original. Always, always, always follow each funder's guidelines to the T. The first indicator of your credibility is whether or not you can follow directions. Once you've submitted your proposal and done all you can do, you just have to sit back and wait till they make their decision. This is probably the hardest part of the process, and the answer will be either a yes or a no. In either case, this is where the real work begins. If the answer is yes, you've done everything successful and had a little luck along the way. You'll receive notification that your project has been approved for funding. You'll often receive a grant agreement letter from the funder before you receive the actual check. You will need then to review, sign, and send it back to the funder before they send the check. This is a good time to include a nice thank you letter. The thank you letter gives you an opportunity to not only express appreciation for the grant, but to tell the funder once again how the grant is going to make a difference to the people that you serve.
Oops, Sherri, I think we might have lost your audio.
Oh,
There we go.
am I here? Okay,
Yep.
okay. If the answer is no, the odds are that 1 out of 3 funders will say yes if you're lucky. The other 2 will say no, but a no rarely means never, so don't take it personally and don't give up too quickly. Find out why if you can, but do it graciously. Some funders will not have a specific reason for why you didn't get the grant. It's usually because there's just not enough funding to go around. So it's perfectly acceptable to ask whether you can apply again in the future. Receiving a grant isn't the end of the process. In fact, it's just the beginning of the relationship. Your funder is your partner now, and during the course of the grant period, you'll want to keep your program officer informed of how the project is going. That means sending all required reports and sending them on time. In addition, if your project has been made a significant accomplishment, or if you've achieved some kind of milestone, by all means, send a note or make a phone call to let them know. Also, if you're having a reception or event, don't forget to include your program officer to the invitation list. They might not be able to come, but it's a good practice to invite them. This type of communication is a good way to build relationship with funders, as well as paving a way for the renewal process. The key takeaway portion of this is always remember to start with an outline that will help you better organize your thoughts and pinpoint the key things that you want to say. Keep the language clear and concise. Avoid jargon and acronyms that the average reader won't understand, but also be sure to tell a compelling story. Make it persuasive. Focus on the funder's interest, not just your own. Do your research. Know who you are approaching and why. Follow the funder's guidelines, always. And be sure to revise and edit before submitting. And I usually have someone proofread mine before it's even sent out. And we've reached the end of the presentation from Candid on proposal writing. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you think of something later, again, go ahead and contact me.
So I'll be monitoring the chat if anyone can't necessarily jump in, but also feel free, you can unmute yourself if you have questions as well.
No questions?
I can maybe start off with one.
Okay.
Sherri, what's one of the longest proposals that you've put together, and maybe what was the process about process of getting that completed?
I want to say it was about 20 pages. The sections were very detailed. The word count was anywhere from 500, 1,200 words, 750, depending on the section. There were a lot of information. Of course, we had to put our key personnel in there, a little bit of background information on who's doing the project. Back it up with statistics, quote your sources. You know, we have to do a lot of research in the area of the people that we serve to make sure you have your facts straight. So it's a lot of initial work. But once you have the basic information in your Candid profile, it's easy to go back and get that information extracted from there. Of course, the statistics are going to vary depending on what topic you are asking funding for. And I usually just block off, depending on how many projects I've got going on, I try to just block off days on my calendar where I try to do nothing but work on the grant. So I'm not interrupted.
Fair. Do you have any advice for people who are juggling maybe multiple different things at the same time while trying to write a grant? Like what's the best strategy to go about it, maybe with a deadline in mind?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's making sure you claim your Candid profile and getting that basic information in there. It saves you a lot of time when you're writing a grant. And maybe try to get other people to help you. I mean, you're working as a library, and if you have other departments, you're going to need information from those staff members. So maybe try to get that information together up front before you even start writing the grant. That's why the Candid profile, it really comes in handy. And as I save that information as well, so I have a backup copy that I can refer to. And also the demographic consensus information is easy, and then other reports that you find that are specific to your project that you're trying to achieve.
And then is there like typically a time frame that you typically start looking for grants, or is there a good time to keep an eye out, like, oh, this is a great time to look for new ones that are popping up, or just always keep your eyes open?
Yeah, I mean, there's no magical time of the year that's better than any other. So yeah, it's just researching what's out there and, have a plan of maybe what you want to apply for next year. Sometimes I find that sometimes staff have wonderful ideas, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get them to come up with an idea when this money is on the table. So maybe have a planning schedule of some projects that you want to work on, and then try to approach the funders, or if you have a local funder that you have a relationship with. Uh, we have that in our case. But I've applied for the Library of Michigan grants, so and other professional association grants. So they don't always come from particular foundations that are in the foundation directory. But it's helpful if staff keep an eye out, and you keep an eye out for the grants that are being announced.
Fair enough, fair enough. I'll leave it open. If people have more questions, I can always read them from the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to. Okay, I got a question in the chat. Is it a safer strategy to apply for small grants when first starting out?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a proven track record, it might still be a little bit more difficult, but yeah, a smaller grant if you want to try it out. Otherwise, again, look to your individual donors in your community for your fundraising, and then try to build your reputation that way. But yeah, you can try a smaller grant. But again, it's building that reputation and having that Candid profile out there, excuse me, so they can see that you are a legitimate nonprofit, and you're capable of doing the work.
That was a great question.
My allergies.
More questions.
More questions?
Oh, I got another one. Should you employ the same written techniques when seeking community donations?
Yeah, the same format would apply. I mean, you're still going to want to describe your project and why you're the best person to do that. And so, yeah, it's usually in more, maybe a letter or a condensed more version, depending on what they're asking for. But yeah, basically the same framework applies.
I'm going to slide a question in here too. What do you tell people if there may be thinking in the back of their head, well, I don't have a lot of things that I can put in my profile about me, or maybe my staff is newer and I'm concerned that people aren't going to have a lot to brag on in their profile. What would you say to someone in that regard?
If their staff is fairly new,
Mhm.
well, I mean, you got to start someplace. So, I mean, you can list your credentials, and that's why you have to grow, your nonprofit and your credibility. So, again, whether that's starting out with a smaller foundation or look at your individuals and look at individual fundraising.
Perfect. Or go ahead.
Um, our friends at the library are very active, and so we bring in a lot of membership and dues money for that, and they do give it back to the library for our programming and different services. So if you have a friends group too, it's a good resource.
Yeah, that brings up another good topic too. Some libraries might not have, their nonprofit, maybe they're a part of the city or something like that. Would you say that this is something that maybe they can work with their friends to do?
Yeah, if they're, the friends, they have their 501(c)(3), yes. Or they can work with, yeah, definitely the friends, but if they don't have a friends group, they can work with the city or find another nonprofit 501(c)(3) organization, and they can be the fiscal sponsor for the project. So they would handle the money and then distribute it to you if they want to partner with you on a particular project.
Good. Sounds good. Any other questions? Got some comments just saying thank you for all of this. Well, if there's no other questions, Sherri, I appreciate your time so much. This has been a lot of information.
It
I
is a lot.
encourage everyone to feel free. Sherri, do you mind just flipping back to your page with your information on it?
Sure. Yeah, go back real quick. Should I get out of here? Oh, there we go.
You need to uh, contact Sherri and get more questions or maybe more specific answers. Feel free and reach out. But thank you again for all of your time, and
Thank you.
we hope to see you at the next one.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.